world's undisputed military superpower literally ran out of missiles.
Like completely ran out.
Yeah, completely. And not, a decade from now in some theoretical war game, but literally next month.
It's a terrifying thought.
Right. Because we usually think of global dominance as this permanent physical reality. You can count the aircraft carriers, you tally up the fighter jets, and the rest of the world looks at that stack of chips and just, folds.
Exactly.
But what happens when you look closer and realize those chips are vanishing at a rate that is just mathematically impossible to sustain?
Well, it creates a fascinating and frankly terrifying vulnerability. Because when the actual hardware runs out, the entire psychological illusion of untouchable power, it just starts to fracture right along with it.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive, and we are stepping into a genuinely intense analysis of where the global power structure stands at this exact moment in time.
We really are. And to do that, we're looking at a single, incredibly provocative source document today.
Yeah.
It's a geopolitical essay, and it's titled The Afterglow of the Empire's Sunset and the 250th Anniversary Empty City Stratagem.
Which is quite the title.
It really is.
Now, before we go any further, I need to put a massive flashing neon disclaimer right here at the start of the show.
Yeah, very important.
Because this document, it contains some highly politically charged, intensely critical analysis regarding the current United States administration.
Extremely critical.
Right. And our goal today is absolutely not to endorse these viewpoints, nor are we, taking sides on any of the political arguments presented here.
No, not at all.
We are strictly acting as your impartial guides. The mission today is just to break down the arguments, the data, and the underlying logic the author uses.
Because they're making the case that America's current geopolitical struggles are basically the result of a massive collision between military-industrial exhaustion and, domestic political theater.
Right, so we're just going to treat the document's claims as our premise for the next 15 minutes or so and just see where the math takes us.
And I have to say, that math is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
Because the core of this analysis, it isn't about ideology or, campaign speeches.
Yeah.
It's about supply chains. It's about inventory. The foundational argument here is that the so-called democratic arsenal is experiencing a severe, totally unprecedented industrial exhaustion.
Now, okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand this exhaustion, we have to look at what actually happened with Operation Epic Fury.
Right.
Because we went in expecting what this text calls a Silicon Valley-style war.
Which is such an interesting phrase.
It is. It's this assumption that modern conflict is essentially just a software problem. You identify a target on a screen, you click a mouse, and a precision strike eliminates it with zero friction and supposedly zero American casualties.
But the thing is, friction is a physical reality.
Yes.
In just the first few weeks of that operation, the U.S. burned through over 1,000 Tomahawk cruise missiles.
1,000 in weeks.
Yeah. And the financial cost alone is just eye-watering. We're talking roughly $2.6 billion just evaporated.
Wow.
But the financial cost is actually completely secondary to the strategic cost.
Because firing those 1,000 missiles, that brought the total U.S. stockpile of Tomahawks down to about 2,000.
Right.
And 2,000 might sound like plenty, right? If
Sure.
you're just looking at a spreadsheet. But the context here is super critical.
Yeah, that 2,000 mark isn't just a random number. Pentagon planners actually consider it a death red line.
A death red line.
Exactly. Those remaining missiles, they are the absolute bare minimum required to maintain any sort of credible deterrence in the Indo-Pacific region.
Okay.
If you fall below that line, you basically invite conflict in Asia, because potential adversaries know you physically cannot stop them.
Wow.
So by burning through those reserves in the Middle East, you aren't just fighting one localized war.
Right.
You're pulling the load-bearing pillars out of your entire global defense architecture just to build a temporary roof over a regional conflict.
It's like draining your entire retirement account just to pay for your daily coffee habit.
That is a perfect way to put it.
You survive the week, sure, but you've completely destroyed your future security. And the situation with defensive weapons, like the Patriot missiles, is somehow even more alarming, right?
Oh, yeah.
The text uses a very specific military term here, the Winchester state.
Right, so Winchester is aviation and artillery shorthand for being completely out of ammunition.
Out of ammo.
Yeah. And the analysis suggests the U.S. Air Defense Network is basically hurtling toward a Winchester state right now as we speak.
So let's look at the production logic behind that, or Well, the lack of it.
Yeah, let's...
Over the last 2 months, the U.S. fired roughly 1,200 Patriot interceptors, just to shoot down incoming drones and artillery.
So 102 months.
Right. But the entire U.S. military-industrial complex only produced 600 of those interceptors in all of 2025.
That is crazy.
It is. They are consuming these defenses at 2.5 times their maximum production rate. And plus, there is this insane economic asymmetry at play here, too.
Oh, absolutely.
You have an Iranian drone that costs, what, maybe $50,000?
Roughly, yeah.
And it's being shot down by a Patriot missile that costs millions.
Millions of dollars per shot.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is the structural explanation for why this bottleneck even exists in the first place.
Yeah, the author goes deep into that.
They trace this back through 30 years of this blind systemic faith in just-in-time manufacturing and globalization.
Yeah, the corporate model.
Exactly. For decades, the defense sector basically adopted a financialized software-as-a-service mindset. And sure, that's highly efficient for corporate profits during peacetime.
Sure.
But a kinetic war is not a software update.
No, you can't just, code a solid rocket motor into existence.
Precisely. The U.S. ended up with this engineering culture that can write the most sophisticated targeting algorithms on the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
But fundamentally lacks the skilled physical tradesmen, like the specialized welders and machinists required to actually build the missile casings and engines at scale.
Well, wait, the administration recently signed that new bill, right? The SPEED Act?
Yeah, the SPEED Act.
To theoretically fix this and fast-track weapon production. But the document kind of just dismisses that as a purely political IOU.
Because heavy industry just doesn't respond to legislation.
Right.
It responds to time, and it responds to physical infrastructure. It'll take 3 to 7 years for those new manufacturing lines to actually come online, to train a specialized workforce, and to start outputting functional weapons.
3 to 7 years.
Yeah. So you are looking at a multi-year gap where the superpower simply cannot replace what it is currently firing.
Okay, wait. If we are fundamentally running out of precision missiles, and our air defenses are going to be firing blanks within a few months, why not just rely on sheer manpower? If you can't win an air war of attrition, this brings up the option that's been floated by several Washington hawks lately, which is a 500,000 troop ground invasion.
Right, the boots on the ground approach.
Yeah. Now, to play devil's advocate here, wouldn't 500,000 or even 1,000,000 troops just overwhelm the opponent? I mean, that is a staggering force. Doesn't that kind of mass fundamentally shift the balance?
You'd think so, but the text argues it actually shifts it in the wrong direction.
Really?
Yeah, based on the geographic data they lay out, this is where traditional 20th century military thinking just crashes into modern asymmetric reality.
Okay, how so?
Well, Iran is over 1.6 million square kilometers, and more than 2/3 of that territory is dominated by the incredibly rugged Zagros Mountains.
So we aren't talking about the flat, open deserts of something like, Desert Storm.
No, that at all.
Where massive armored columns can just roll across the landscape totally unobstructed.
Exactly. The Zagros Mountains are a labyrinth. It's deep valleys and natural choke points. And the U.S. military is entirely built around high-energy, heavy logistics.
Right, they need constant supplies.
A force of 500,000 troops requires a massive, continuous flow of fuel, food, and ammunition. And in that specific topography, those long supply lines don't project power.
Yo.
They become highly vulnerable nerve endings.
So every single fuel truck trying to, navigate a narrow mountain pass basically becomes an isolated target.
Exactly. And against an opponent that is utilizing swarms of cheap, modern suicide drones, a 500,000-man army isn't really an occupying force.
What are they then?
The analysis brutally refers to them as live targets.
Oof, live targets.
Yeah. Surging troop numbers into that geography linearly increases your casualty rate because you are fighting a saturated conflict against the terrain itself, not just a standing army.
Which introduces a massive psychological block for the administration.
It really does.
The text frames their reaction to this tactical nightmare through a concept they call taco logic.
Right, TACO.
TACO. It stands for Trump always chicken out.
Which is obviously a very charged term.
Very charged. Setting aside the language, though, the strategic logic the author is trying to describe here is basically a real estate negotiation approach to foreign policy, right?
It's the exact mechanism being highlighted, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a purely transactional, highly opportunistic style of diplomacy.
Right.
When this mindset is dealing with smaller, weaker neighbors, who really lack the capacity to strike back, the approach is overwhelmingly aggressive.
Right, you see threats of crippling tariffs.
Or those bizarre maximalist flexes like floating the idea of buying Greenland or seizing control of the Panama Canal.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's an aggressive posture meant to project this dominant strongman image.
But the taco logic suggests that this transactional bravado only works when the other side has absolutely no leverage.
Exactly.
When this same mindset encounters a truly resilient asymmetric opponent.
Like Iran.
Right. One with massive geographic depth and a very high cultural tolerance for sustaining conflict and casualties, the entire calculation just changes. The bluff gets called.
And the analysis argues that when the bluff is called, the administration panics.
They panic.
Instead of formulating a long-term strategic victory, they realize the immediate cost is just way too high. And the instinct is to immediately pivot, retreat, and look for literally any available face-saving exit.
So, okay, if the physical reality of the mountains makes a ground war impossible,
Right.
and the industrial reality makes an air war unsustainable, what options does the administration actually have left?
That's the million-dollar question.
Like, why are they acting so frantically right now, specifically in May of 2026?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The driving force behind the current strategic paralysis, it isn't military at all.
It's not?
No, it's the calendar.
Ah, the document zeroes in on July 4, 2026.
Exactly.
The 250th anniversary of the United States.
Huh.
A quarter of a millennium?
Think about the domestic political value of that specific date. The text argues that the leadership is utterly obsessed with securing a flawless, symbolic coronation photo op.
A coronation photo op.
Yeah, they want to stand in front of the Statue of Liberty or the Lincoln Memorial against this massive backdrop of fireworks and just declare an era of absolute American strength and victory to the world.
But that obsession has basically turned the date into a political noose.
A perfect way to describe it.
Because you cannot project absolute strength if the news cycle is being dominated by a military disaster.
No, you can't.
The administration simply cannot afford the political catastrophe of a photo showing a burning U.S. aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf.
Or hostage videos of captured American soldiers in the Zagros Mountains hitting the internet on, July 3rd.
Exactly.
So this fear of ruining the anniversary narrative has plunged the U.S. into what the text calls strategic shock throughout May and June.
Strategic shock.
The military is essentially ordered to be paralyzed.
Right.
They cannot escalate to win, but they cannot withdraw entirely without looking incredibly weak. So they're just frozen in place, prioritizing the safety of a holiday photo op over actual strategic positioning.
Which perfectly explains the title of the document. The Empty City Stratagem.
Yes.
We really need to break down what that means because it frames this entire frantic diplomatic scramble we're seeing.
So the Empty City Stratagem is a classic concept from ancient Chinese military history.
Right.
It's a psychological bluff used when you are completely outmatched and totally out of troops. Instead of barricading the doors and preparing for a siege you are inevitably going to lose, you throw the city gates wide open, you sit on the wall, and you calmly play a lute.
It's so counterintuitive. You project this supreme, almost irrational confidence, so the enemy thinks they are walking into a massive hidden trap, and they just retreat.
Exactly. You hide your total vulnerability behind a facade of total control.
Right.
And the analysis argues that the entire U.S. posture right now is a modern empty city stratagem.
They are projecting dominance for the cameras.
While behind the scenes, they are engaging in what the text calls diplomatic schizophrenia, to secretly secure a way out.
The examples of this diplomatic schizophrenia are just wild.
They really are.
First, you have this sudden, intense showering of Ukrainian President Zelensky with extreme flattery.
Yeah.
And it's not a shift in military support, it's just a desperate attempt to bank some quick moral points domestically.
Right, they are using an ally as a public relations prop to launder their own reputation while their Middle East strategy completely collapses.
But the second example is the true execution of the empty city bluff, and it involves Beijing.
This card is staggering.
The analysis claims the U.S. is showing almost humiliating levels of deference to China, secretly asking their leadership for a big hug from their primary global rival.
Yeah, because the goal is to use Beijing as a fire dispatcher.
A fire dispatcher?
The U.S. is reportedly begging China to use its economic and diplomatic leverage over Iran to basically force a ceasefire. They need Beijing to restrain the opponent so the U.S. can execute a face-saving withdrawal before that July 4th deadline.
The geopolitical cost of that is staggering to even think about. I mean, you are mortgaging a century of American strategic dignity.
You really are.
You're essentially admitting to your biggest rival that you cannot manage your own military quagmire, handing them all the leverage, all just to ensure a clean backdrop for a fireworks show.
It reveals a system that has completely lost the ability to distinguish between a PR victory and a structural reality.
And this is where we have to ground all of this in reality for you listening right now.
Yeah.
Think about what you are planning for July 4th, 2026. According to this document, the administration's entire global military strategy is currently built around making sure your barbecue isn't interrupted by breaking news of a collapsed front line.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
But while Washington is obsessing over optics, the real-world consequences of this frozen conflict are rippling out, and the price is just terrifying.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fallout isn't just about bruised political egos.
Right.
It's an economic earthquake.
Right.
Because those U.S. aircraft carriers and naval strike groups are pinned down in the Persian Gulf in this bizarre, forced stalemate. Global shipping lanes and energy markets are just in a state of sustained panic.
Right. The essay points out that oil is trapped between $130 and $150 a barrel.
And that isn't just pain at the gas pump for regular people.
Yeah.
Sustained oil at $150 acts as a massive chronic tax on every single level of global manufacturing and transportation.
Yeah.
It bakes inflation into the absolute bedrock of the economy, creating this crisis that central banks simply cannot solve by adjusting interest rates or printing more money.
You can't print your way out of a physical supply shock.
Exactly.
But the energy crisis isn't even the most devastating economic domino here.
No, it's not.
The document brings up the urea crisis.
This is the scariest part.
Iran is a massive global hub for the production of urea, which is a non-negotiable core ingredient in manufacturing nitrogen fertilizer.
Right. And because the region is locked in this military standoff, those supply chains are completely choked off.
Yeah.
The analysis states that global fertilizer prices have skyrocketed by an unbelievable 310%.
310%. And a 310% spike doesn't just mean groceries get more expensive.
No.
It fundamentally breaks the agricultural model for half the planet. Farmers in developing nations simply cannot afford to plant crops.
The author lays out a really brutal human calculation based on that number.
Yeah.
They estimate that if this geopolitical stalemate continues for another year, like if that fertilizer supply remains constrained just to save face in Washington, an additional 45 million people across South Asia, Africa, and Southeast Asia will be pushed into deep food crises and outright famine.
45 million people.
Yeah.
The text calls it a slow-motion famine machine.
A perfect description.
It is a staggering synthesis of cause and effect. An attempt to manage optics for a single political anniversary in the United States has accidentally constructed a mechanism of mass starvation halfway across the world. The cost of the Empty City Stratagem isn't just lost prestige. It is, quite literally, millions of human lives.
It represents the ultimate global debt of opportunistic politics.
Yeah.
When a superpower prioritizes its own domestic theater over strategic, physical reality, the structural integrity of the entire global system just starts to fracture under the weight of that illusion.
So what does this all mean?
Ultimately.
Yeah. When the author looks past the July 4th fireworks, past the immediate panic over the missing missiles, what is their ultimate conclusion about where this leaves the United States?
Well, the final verdict in this analysis is definitive, and it's incredibly grim.
Okay.
First, on a purely physical level, those depleted missile production lines are going to need up to a decade to fully recover.
A decade.
You cannot fast-track a lost industrial base, period. Second, the humanitarian reality is already locked in. The fertilizer shock has happened. The slow-motion famine is already in motion.
So the damage is baked into the global system.
Exactly. And geopolitically, the text argues that the era of relying on the United States is quietly ending.
Wow.
Traditional allies aren't waiting around to see how the next election turns out. Having watched the superpower prioritize a holiday over its strategic commitments, those allies are actively and secretly preparing for a multipolar world.
Right.
They are building security architectures that do not rely on American guarantees anymore.
The author actually points to the upcoming November 2026 midterms, not just as, another political cycle, but as the ultimate reckoning for this era of what they call garbage time diplomacy.
Garbage time diplomacy.
Yeah. They viewed this exact window as the definitive end of Pax Americana, the precise moment the world collectively realizes the security umbrella has closed.
Because the underlying lesson of the document is that you can negotiate with politicians, you can bluff the media, and you can manipulate domestic narratives all you want.
Sure.
But you cannot negotiate with the physical limits of your own industrial capacity.
Which leaves us with a truly profound final thought to mull over.
It does.
As we sit here in May of 2026, heading toward this massive historic milestone, when future historians look back at this exact moment, will they remember the pageantry, the speeches, and the fireworks of the 250th anniversary?
Probably not.
Or will they remember it as the exact moment an empire looked down at the poker table, counted its rapidly vanishing chips, and finally realized it could no longer manufacture its way out of its own illusions?
Question.
It's a heavy question, and one that really forces us to look past the headlines and into the physical realities of power. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We will see you next time.